I mean, deploying is a real sacrifice, but then deploying and somebody who pays the ultimate sacrifice passes away. I mean, that's just devastating for the whole family.
I've seen muzzle flashes. I was not kicking indoors, right? I'm at 25,000 feet watching somebody take a pot shot at an airplane. It's not the same. Now, I've also had my entire aircraft going 0.8 the speed of sound at a mile above the earth catch on fire in the cockpit.
That we know of those who paid a bigger sacrifice than us.
Yes.
And so we, again, almost going back to the survivor's guilt, we have some of that because it's like I know so many people who have done far more, and they're far more deserving than I am.
They want to make sure that their people are trained, that they know how to do their job, because in the end, what we don't want is we don't want to have to include their name in a Memorial Day celebration.
Hey, welcome again out to the God and Country podcast. I'm Uriah Kennedy. We got a whole suite of people with us today. Look, everybody knows John Taylor. He was here just a couple months ago.
Good to see you.
Everybody should recognize John Atkin running for sheriff in Davis County. So glad to have him here. And he's got two of his friends here. We're going to have a special Memorial Day podcast here where we're going to discuss Memorial Day, how it should be celebrated, not just a vacation going out to the lake and going fishing, but what it really should mean to veterans. John, if you want to go ahead and speak into that mic and introduce your friends here.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I'll give them about 30 to 60 seconds each to be able to talk about themselves a little bit more. But yeah, John Atkin, running for Davis County Sheriff, came out of the Republican Convention, very positive. Grateful to be able to be here and have some of these conversations about Memorial Day today. All of us here are veterans, are military veterans in some fashion. I've spent 3 years on the Army side as a military police guy, enlisted. Then I went to the Air Force side as a security forces enlistee, and then commissioned as an Air Force intelligence officer, where I currently serve on the military side. So we'll start to my left with Devin Baker and let him introduce himself.
I'll lean in here on our mic. My name is Devin Baker. I'm an active member right now of the military. I'm in the reserves here in Utah, and I am on the board of directors with a nonprofit that helps support veterans and first responders called Battle Forge Foundation. And then I also do a little bit of social media influencing on the side. And I met John at one of the events that my organization does, and we kind of hit it off and realized that we had a lot of concerns, I think is a good way to say it, for the state of Utah in common. And since then we've had a lot of good discussions, and feel really honored that he invited me to be a part of this.
You can do a plug for your YouTube channel. So you don't forget.
So if you're interested in my YouTube channel, I am the self-proclaimed gun autist here in Utah, and it's called Below Average Utah Dad, and that is the first time I've disclosed my name and the YouTube channel at the same time.
Oh, sorry if you didn't want
Hopefully
to.
This is called the Below Average Utah Dad.
Yes.
That is an awesome name.
Yeah, it robs people of their ability to, I don't know, attack me in any way that has to do with intelligence or sophistication, because it's right there in the name, and if that's all they can come up with, well, it seems more like an intelligence or skill issue on their part. That's where I stand. I do a lot of things, but I doubt.
You ever watch the YouTube channel with the plumber, and he goes through all the?
I think I've seen it.
It sounds just like him, because
we do a lot of. I do things with my kids. I cook food one day. The big thing that kind of got me into a lot of things. I have a video that's got it's got like 3 million views, that somebody breaks into my house. And you've seen this format before, where it plays Sweet Caroline and somebody breaks into the house and then they get all excited. Oh, I'm going to go to this. And then at the it's just like a light that turns on and it implies that something maybe not so friendly happens to the person that broke in the house. My take on it was, I'm not going to do like shotgun or pistol, and I'm not going to look excited. I'm going to look really annoyed that I have to get up in the middle of the night to go take care of this nuisance. And so that's the look on my face, and I pick an AK-47 out of this wall of guns that I could choose, because that's the most effective tool that you would ever use in a personal defense situation in your home is an AK-47. It's that. It's very tongue-in-cheek, with the exception of the mental health stuff that I do. I just finished on this last Monday a full year of doing the 22 push-up challenge, and I still do that every day. I'm not tracking it the way that I did, but I did every day. Posted a video of the 22 push-ups for suicide awareness, the veterans. That's a thing that's really, really big to me. I've lost a lot of people in the military and law enforcement, friends and family, to that battle. And so that's kind of what got me involved in some of the organizations that I do. But I'm taking way more time.
You're good.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
Long-winded. Sorry.
Yeah, but then to my right is Doug Foster, my old air boss.
Yeah, I'm just a dude. Doug Foster, I'm Air Force retired. I did 15 active duty and then another 10, 11 in the Air National Guard here in Utah. I left as the wing commander, so basically in charge of the base. Had all 1,500 folks responding to the things that we had to do, and it's never been more of an honor and privilege than it was. So it was wonderful, and I think my retirement was standing room only, so I think I did all right. And
What are you
I miss it
flying?
every day. 135s, the battle wagon of the sky. And our newest jet was a 64. Our oldest was a 56. So she's still kicking and doing the things out in Iran right now as well. So there's no better aircraft in the inventory.
That's what they say, right?
Yeah, and I'm grateful that Doug was able to come. So he was one of my bosses in the air operations before he became the wing boss. And since his retirement, he's definitely done a phenomenal job of being a good friend and mentor through this process, because he's also finishing up his PhD in leadership. And then also he has his own consulting company. You can give yourself a plug for that too.
Unnecessary, but Winter River Consulting, I do some defense contracting and leadership consulting if people are interested, but it's not a promote yourself. It's a, hey, I know people that have some things, or I know some companies that could use some help with aircraft modernization and let's say entering into the Air Force process, which is not a small learning curve. So anything I can do to help out my friends, family, and country, I'm more than willing to do so.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted just to include that process because all of us are doing extra things, because there is an element that we aren't just doing our own lives. There's a lot of buy-in, especially with people we know with it. Get in the military side, that we feel an intrinsic cause and driving factor to extend the reach and our abilities to influence others for the best. And I hope that some people see that. And that's my purpose as well. Giving you a plug for a pat on the back, but as well as we are all very much committed interest in our communities to make sure that we represent well, but as well as we invest, because if we don't invest in our communities, into our country, into our state, then, what are we going to be left with? And it's our fault in the end if we're not putting in that investment. So thank you.
Well, I love the fact that you're specifically talking about the suicide. I've done probably 4 podcasts specifically around suicide. Yeah, not only suicide amongst our 15 to 17-year-olds, but specifically suicides amongst our veterans. We've had the VFW on. We've had Warriors Haven up from Park City down, if anybody knows that outfit up there. And then we also did a big event with the Warrior Risen Ranch, which is right down here. So, and we know Selecty down there very, very, very well, and spoke about the great program that she has down there and what she's been doing. Went through a few examples of veterans that have come in and what their family has gone through and what they've had to do to come back from loss, come back from mortal or major injuries where it gets completely decapacitated somebody. So that's probably the most special place in my heart is veterans. That's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, is because I was kind of gearing things around veterans. So when he called me, I'm like, I love Memorial Day. It's one of my favorite. And I was one of those fathers when I grew up that I would drag my kids, get them up at 6 a.m., and we'd go find a memorial going on at some cemetery. And every single year, I'd be either up at the cemetery up at the University of Utah up there, or we'd be down the huge memorial one down in Springville. There's a big one down there, or we'd be here in Layton at the War Memorial here. And it wasn't a go out and have barbecues. It's an extra vacation day, cleaning the house. I mean, my kids, I think that's a big reason why they're all in the military now, is because I really kind of taught them that respect as they were growing up. My grandfather on my mother's side was Navy. He fought in both on a destroyer as well as a battleship, World War II. He was one of those guys that saw enough death that he would not talk about it when he got back. And I interviewed him, several times during high school projects, and really tried to get him to open up, and he wouldn't do that very much. And then my grandfather, my dad's side, fought in Korea, and a little more talkative, and so we got a lot of war stories from him and how he just barely survived. I mean, he was a foxhole guy. He was a forward observer for an artillery unit. So he'd go up there, dig a foxhole, and call in the rounds. And he was in trenches, and I told one story where, just not to disrupt everybody, the most heroic story that I heard from him was he was down in the trenches. They had dug this big old wall of trenches, and in the back of his mind, he heard the spirit whispering to him, "Fix bayonet." And so he sits there and he's freaking out because everybody's dying around him. Explosions going off like crazy, and so he fixes his bayonet and he just sits there, and his gun is straight up, and he's just frozen. And then his captain jumps in next to him. "Oh, I see you got one." He's like, "What, huh?" Did not realize that the second he fixed his bayonet and put it up to him, a guy pummeled himself on top of it. That's how close he was. And he didn't even feel the weight. He was so freaked out. Literally, the guy was just dangling above him, which is crazy. So when you guys talk about veteran stuff, it's kind of, I feel for it and understand where you guys are coming from. So this kind of goes through, I mean, John has put this whole itinerary together, so we're going to follow his itinerary.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, our whole purpose was to go through and to talk about Memorial Day and why is it special, why is it important, how it's separate from Veterans Day and from other days and from other holidays. And so in 1868 is when Memorial Day was instituted. It was following the Civil War. So we wanted to go through and also read a story that Devin was going to read for us. Yeah. And then we'll kick it off from there.
So I'll read. If you're unfamiliar with this, this is gotcha. The mic is escaping me. This is called The Fallen Soldier. It comes from Jocko Willink, and everybody knows Jocko, but I'm just going to read the last paragraph of this story. It says, "On that distant battlefield, amongst the fear and the fire and the bullets, or in the sky above enemy territory filled with flak, or on the unforgiving sea where we fought against the enemy and against the depths of the abyss, there in those awful places I held the line. I did not waver and I did not hesitate. I, the soldier, sailor, airman, and marine, I stood my ground and sacrificed my life, my future, my hopes, my dreams. I sacrificed everything for you. This Memorial Day, remember me, the fallen warrior, and remember me not for my sake, but for yours. Remember what I sacrificed so you can truly appreciate the incredible treasures you have: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. You have the joys of life, the joys that I gave up so that you can relish in them: a cool wind in the air, the gentle spring grass on your bare feet, the warm summer sun on your face, family, friends, and freedom. Never forget where it all came from. It came from sacrifice, the supreme sacrifice. Live a life that honors us, the fallen heroes. Remember us, and make every day Memorial Day."
Classic. Super nice.
Incredible, touching story, right? I mean, a lot of people really don't appreciate soldiers as much. I mean, you get the salutes in the airports and you get the thank you for your service, but do they really understand what the sacrifice is? It's not just a sacrifice to you, it's sacrifice to your family. When you get deployed, your wife doesn't know, kids don't know if you're going to come back, not going to come back. It's heart-wrenching to the families because they just kind of live through it. It just becomes just normal nature to the families. And then there's a sense of neglect when you get off.
True statement.
Transition from military to civilian life is very, very complicated for most soldiers. There's not very many skills that transfer straight across. Most of them become police officers or security guards or something like that. And very, very few are lucky enough to transition well enough. And there's a lot of PTSD. We're barely starting to learn what PTSD is doing and how that affects soldiers. I listen to a lot of Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan's my favorite podcaster. I listen to hours and hours of his podcasters, and probably the most touching story I've ever heard, and I don't even remember the name of the gentleman, but he was trying to get into the VA and get some health care and stuff like that, and just he couldn't get in. He'd went in there a few times and just was struggling to get the paperwork, get any type of health care, and he was just really mentally struggling. His wife had left him. He was barely seeing his kids and trying to find a decent job. He was going from job to job. Went into the VA once, and he had got the runaround again, and he literally went out the parking lot and had his service revolver, and he literally had the revolver with a gun in his mouth, pulling the trigger when his phone rang. And the phone rang, and it was a friend that had served with them. They had lost track of each other for well over a year. And his friend says, "Hey, buddy, how's things going? I'm starting this new retreat he was up in Oregon or Washington somewhere, for veterans. It's going to be centered around marksmanship and teaching people marksmanship and stuff like that. We'll try to pull in police officers, and I really need you to come and lead this event because you're the best in our team, I think. And we're going to start teaching them how to cope, but also it's going to be centered around this whole marksmanship stuff." And he says, "Can you come up and run it for him?" He says, he said, "I choked up for almost a minute before I could talk." Because right before he had said that, he said, "God, I'm done. Unless you talk to me right now, I'm out of this place." And it was that last minute phone call, literally in the act, and he went up there and just never looked back. I mean, just completely pulled out of him. And the interview with Sean Ryan was so powerful because he would talk about his belief in God and how that just grew, and he was really kind of a non-denominational Christian, but kind of pulled him out. And that's what a lot of veterans need, is just that kind of helping hand, that friendship, someone just reach out, be there, and don't necessarily need to talk veterans through anything. You don't need to walk through whatever they went through in the field. Do you need somebody to show up and say, "Hey, let's go fishing"?
100% on that. Sorry, I'm gonna hijack a little bit here. So this is something I talk a lot about, and I'm very passionate about. I've learned a lot about it, more in the last 7 or 8 months than I had previously throughout the rest of my life, with the involvement I have with the nonprofit. And if it's okay, I'm gonna do a plug for the nonprofit. It's called Battle Forge Foundation, and our whole purpose is breaking isolation, because isolation and really, like, it fits for the theme of today for Memorial Day, because what people don't realize, if we look back at World War I, World War II, even the Civil War, the Korean War, when people would deploy, when they would go overseas, when they would fight in these battles, the general public, they knew how horrific these battles were. After Vietnam, really the way that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, as a wing commander, the doctrine that the military in general took to training and preparing and really getting ahead of, we're not going to have situations like we've had in the past. So when we lose soldiers now in combat, it's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Because we train so hard, and you know, everybody has their specialty, and everybody does a little bit of overlap. You know, we talk about multi-capable airmen in the Air Force. I know the Army has, you know, the Army of one is not a single individual, but we're all part of the same crowd, and we're all part of the same group, and everybody kind of needs to know how to do a little bit of everything in case something goes wrong.
Sure.
But nobody wants that. It's when they get back, that's where I think a lot of people don't realize we lose more people coming back to things like suicide and drug abuse and alcohol abuse, and it's absolutely horrific. There's a reason that stereotypical 22 a day, there's a reason that exists, and it's awful that it does. But I think last year I told somebody, last year alone, if we're incorporating more than just veterans, if we're, you know, going on that mental health side, it was like almost 50,000 people that committed suicide in the U.S. last year. And of that, it's about 75% men. And of that 75%, it's like 85% veterans, law enforcement, first responders. That's like the population of Bountiful.
Yeah.
Gone.
It's hard because when you go on these deployments and you have these experiences, and some of them are tough. Like you said, the earlier war fighters really in the jungle on the front lines with bayonets and things like that saw some really hard stuff. But even our soldiers that deploy, my soldiers that would deploy, it changes you. When you go through a crucible type experience, even if it's just training, like basic training or something, it changes you. It first of all, it galvanizes you. It creates a camaraderie unlike you've ever seen. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, what your religion is. You become such good friends with the people going through the same crucible. But what happens quite often is soldiers come back changed, and their family members and their loved ones are home, and they are also changing, and they are sacrificing just as much as soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines who are on the deployment. Let's never forget the family that is also sacrificing. But often they come back and they're trying to relearn compatibility with each other. They're trying to figure out, I'm different and you're different now. And it's hard. But some of these soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines that you're talking about that come back with some of these fundamental struggles that they deal with mental health, that's a hard thing. And like you said, like Uriah said, they just need to talk. They need a friend. They need to be active. They need to get involved. And I'm grateful for Memorial Day. It does highlight the mental health. It does highlight the sacrifice. It does highlight the gratitude that we have. I'm grateful that people recognize the gratitude that we have, because we do need to teach, like Uriah was saying, we need to teach our kids that gratitude. They don't have the perspective, but taking them to the cemetery and telling them some of these stories is beneficial. That gives them the perspective, and that helps them understand what is Memorial Day? Why are we celebrating this? Because we know freedom is never free. It will always require the sacrifice of blood. Somebody's always going to have to give their life to maintain our freedoms, especially in today's day and age. Now, I'm sure as a wing commander, you probably had, airmen that passed away, maybe?
Yep.
And did you ever have to go do the knock on the door?
I thankfully never had to do the knock on the door. We had one suicide when I was in a command position, and I think we got kind of to the root of that, as heartbreaking as it is. And unfortunately, it was a lot to do with just misinformation. Like, some of the medical responsibilities that are in the military have evolved along with some of these psychological problems that people are having, but the rules and stuff have not caught up or had not caught up yet. So, like, if you needed to be on an antidepressant, that would really mess with your security clearance.
Yes.
Well, if your security clearance is required for your job, you just made yourself unemployed by saying, I have a problem. So that's not a way to encourage people going to seek mental health
Right.
if they need it, right? But thankfully, slowly but surely, a lot of those rules are changing. So as long as your depression, anxiety, whatever your mental condition is, barring a suicide attempt or, multiple personalities, if your condition can't be controlled with medication, that is compatible with military service now. Well, the individual that we lost to suicide, unfortunately, did not believe that those rules had changed, went cold turkey off of his medicine, and had an issue, and ended up taking his own life. And it's an old Star Trek quote: you can do everything right and still fail. It happens, right? And unfortunately, we had people doing the right thing, and they just could not get to him. And it was to the point where, the wellness check was knocking on his door when he ended up taking his life. So,
Yes.
I mean, that's how close we were to saving that person. So there's those types of losses which you feel like are preventable, which really aren't to an extent. I mean, because if someone makes up their mind that they're going to do something,
They'll find a way.
yeah. You can do as much as you can to try to change that, surround them with the right people, give them, my wife thankfully is a mental health therapist, so I have a lot of at least tangential background in some of this stuff, which is great because she's amazing. But there's only so much you can do to help those folks before they're going to make the decision of their
Yeah.
Now, then you have the combat related losses, then you have the combat accidents or training accidents, which are also things that you can't really control. We had a member that passed away during a deployment. It was a medical condition that no one knew about, and it was very difficult to find. Ended up passing away while deployed. We had to take care of that return. That was terrible. We had I've had a couple friends die in training accidents. We just had a 135 135 went down in support of Iranian operations.
All right.
I was the chief of tanker training for the Air Mobility Command when we lost Shell 77, which was a mechanical problem with the aircraft, and then a poor response from the crew to that malfunction, and lost the aircraft and the crew. So I've seen it.
Yes.
I've dealt with it, and I've dealt with it at all levels of different command structures, and it never gets any easier. And if it does, then you probably shouldn't be in the position you're in,
Right.
because this should not be I know how to deal with this. It's okay. Let's wrap our arms around the family and figure it out.
But the military's done well in creating a system of checks and balances where we talk about mental health now, where it used to be suck it up and drive on. You're not tough if you're not talking about it. But the toughest guys are struggling with mental health. And I know John and the police force and with the officers, because they're dealing with such high stress, tense situations that literally fundamentally change them. You guys have struggles with your officers and their family relations as well, and
Absolutely.
suicide and things.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too, with when you have those calls that are just constant peaks and valleys, just peaks in throughout the day, just back to back to back. Yeah, it definitely builds up because your body's, and then you're trying to process that information during the call, and your mind's maybe on the last call, then you're going to the next call and trying to work through that. And as well as trying to be safe and make sure that you make it home to your family too.
No, we just had these officers pass away in Tremont, and
Yeah, that's terrible.
that was a terrible incident where walking up to a normal call, and the next thing you know, two of them are dead, and third one's wounded with the dog. Just
They always have to be on the ready. Your officers always have to be at a heightened alert. That's why if I ever get pulled over, I've got my hands on my steering wheel, just to try to make the situation as compatible, because they've got to expect everything. And then they're trying to make a quick action decision, whether this is a life or threat. Should I use deadly force? How do I neutralize this threat? It's tough.
Yeah, and it gets pretty heavy, and that's one of the things too. I like different options and different avenues. I like that, there's option of mental health. There's option of getting mental health through a professional. There's also option through a clergy member or someone that's a religious leader within the organization. I love the social and the physical, the four pillars, I believe is what it is, 4 pillars on the mental health or physical health or well-being on the military side, because those are all super important. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to have good social relationships, because one of the things we noticed that helps substantially within law enforcement and public safety is the peer support program.
Connectivity.
With me, I, and maybe I'm ignorant to some of the process, but with going and seeing a therapist and counselor, but man, when I go out and I hang out with my friends and I have these conversations, that in itself, I feel like it fills my tank. It helps me work through the process to know I'm not the only one. That, hey, my buddies feel it too. We experience these things together. We're working through it together. And like even you said with family members, that's one of the things a lot of people don't understand when you deploy. I deployed in the fall of 2019, and what happened then? COVID. And so my 6-month deployment turns into a 9-month in the Middle East, and my wife's at home with 4 young kids. I left, my youngest was 2 weeks old when I left on that deployment. Volunteer base, that's the great thing about the guard side is most of the folks they will raise their hand and say, yes, I'll go because it's my turn. And that's the position I got. I got to be a E7 or E6 tech sergeant on the Air Force side. I'm like, I haven't gone. I need to go. And so I had that conversation with my wife, and she's amazing, and she's okay. I support
Supportive, yeah.
And then but then dealing with the craziness with COVID in a deployed location, then knowing that my young family's back home working through this craziness.
Yes.
And so there are a lot of those. But man, you hit it on the head with the reconnectivity, coming back and and trying to mesh back, because both of us are living our independent lives, and things have changed significantly. That was very difficult.
Learning the rules.
Yeah.
And
I get better as I get older. But
No, it was, why are you letting the kid do that? What are you talking about? That's a thing. Oh, yeah, whatever your mom said. You have to get back in that role because you were not playing that role. And hopefully, while you were gone, your leadership and your team were taking care of your family.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the trust that you build. And that's why that's so important. On the mental health side, if you're in leadership and you're not going publicly to the mental health folks and showing that it's not retributional, it's supposed to be utilized, leave the door open and let people see you sitting there talking to the counselor, because you want them to utilize that resource. And a lot of the fear-based stuff is no joke because it's been weaponized in the past. And keeping that avenue open for people is essential for their own well-being. But yeah, no, Jeannie and I had some great personal reintegration things. Like my kids were scared of the color sand brown. Like they would see me put on that flight suit and it was instant waterworks. There's nothing you could do.
Yeah.
But, come back home, slow, integration back into family life. Back when malls were a thing, we would go to the mall so I could sit around and be around like normal civilians for a bit. Cause you were not used to the hustle and bustle. You were grinding the mish every day. And after 19, 20 deployments, it gets a little rowdy.
Yeah. And it's hard because I had 3 deployments, and when I was deployed, I felt like in some ways it was harder on my wife at home, worrying about me, stressed if I was going to be killed or whatever. And I'm off doing my job 7 days a week, working with all my buddies, having a good time. But there was times when some really hard, heavy things were happening at home, and I just felt helpless, like I couldn't do anything.
Yep.
But thank goodness for support systems in the neighborhood and stuff. People step up, people reach out, especially military folks who are going through the same experience, understand it. So my wife and some of the other wives whose husbands were deployed, they would just get together and be able to, help and talk things out. And that's honestly, that's what everybody needs, is just that support system, because you go through these things. We're talking about Memorial Day, but you go through a loss. You want to talk to somebody who can relate to having a loss, and it's so helpful that way. So,
well, a lot of these things too, John, I feel it's very much it's so much easier to work through them if you kind of know that these are issues, or know that these are challenges you're going to deal with. And I know Doug was talking about the sand colored suit. When I came home, and my youngest, when I left when she was 2 weeks old, now I come home and she's 9 months old.
Yep.
And I go to hold her and she starts crying because she doesn't know me.
Yep.
And then people around that don't know start laughing because they kind of think it's funny. Like
That's
these
crushing.
these are some of the things that people don't realize, that man, these things happen. And if you're going in as a deployed member and leaving, you got to understand that some of these things might happen to you, to be able to. So it's not as heavy when it hits you.
Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely, to have those.
that's a real sacrifice. Deploying is a real sacrifice, but then deploying and somebody who pays the ultimate sacrifice passes away. That's just devastating for the whole family, and it's people who have lost loved ones. in the military, you know, we celebrate them. Memorial Day is a great holiday. I mean, they deserve to be celebrated because they purchased our freedoms with their blood and their sacrifice. And we just need to always be grateful for that and instill it with our kids. You know, say the Pledge of Allegiance, teach them the importance of the Pledge of Allegiance, what that means in schools. You know, they try and take some of these things out of schools, you know.
Oh, that's horrible. They don't even teach history anymore.
I know.
Or civics.
They don't teach civics. They don't teach appreciation at all. One of the things I find is hardest, and you guys as veterans can kind of make this an example, is when you're out in the field, you have your buddy and they understand what you're going through because they're in it, right? And you have your whole team there, the whole platoon, whatever it is, and they're all in it. But the issue is when you get home, one of you is from Utah, another one is from Seattle, another one of your buddies is from Texas, another one's from New Jersey, right? And you get home and that closeness, that brotherhood, that friendship is just not there. You don't have them sitting next to you. You don't have them in the next bunk next to you. And so now you're looking for that. You don't have it, trying to find somebody that understands, and then you really don't want to share anything with your wife because they'll just freak her out what you went through, right?
Don't ever let your wife read your OERs.
I've
It's a bad idea.
I've talked to a lot of veterans where they said, I can't tell my wife what I went through. It will freak her out and it will make the relationship worse, right? So they're trying to protect their wife's feelings, trying to protect their kids' feelings, but yet then they have no place to get it out with, no one to talk to about it. And it's not like neighbors can come up and start talking to them. Why? Because you haven't been there. You have not gone through that. So it's where big organizations like the one you're putting together and many other organizations are being put together for veterans, where veterans can talk to veterans and have somebody that they understand, that understands them, been there, done that. To give an example, my niece committed suicide. My sister's daughter, 11 years old. Horrible event. It's literally been 10 years ago, exactly about a week ago. And so my sister just experienced her 10-year event. And a lot of people try to talk to her about it. And I just tell people, you can't go and console somebody if you've actually have not been through it. And so my sister's gone out and created a group of what they call angel moms, where people have gone through that and they can relate to each other because they've gone through it. It's the same experience with veterans, and that's why I say a lot of people, when they're talking to veterans and trying to help veterans, they say, well, let's talk about it. No, that's not. If you haven't been there, done that, please don't try knocking to them, because one of two things happens. It's either you think you can understand them and provide some sympathy, or it becomes an entertainment story. And the veteran's not telling you to entertain you, right? Because it's not just a cool story of what I've gone through, right? And veterans hate that. Even though they'll eventually start sharing it, it's good for people to hear what you've gone through. There's moments and times where that's not an entertainment. That's not.
Yep. And everybody copes in their own way. And so some of your veterans come back and they've had such difficult stories and they don't want to talk about it. And that's okay. But you do got to keep an eye on them. You just got to make sure they're good, because some of them are just not going to talk about it, and some will talk about it and just get it out. And however they coped is going to be okay. It really doesn't matter. We just need to come together as a community and help them through some of these, mental health challenges.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, you're right. I was thinking about, I'm sure we've probably all seen Black Hawk Down, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so like at the end, when Hoot's talking to the other guy, and he's like, I don't see anything because they won't understand. And sometimes I feel like this is kind of within that realm, that it's not a dig at other people, but it's hard to be able to express that. It's hard to be able to convey being in those situations, being separated from family for months on end, having the unknown, and then life passing you by on the outside. And then, of course, the traumatic events. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's worth even talking about or bringing up because they won't understand. But this understands.
Even in our service, like I'm sure I have been shot at. I've seen muzzle flashes. And I was not kicking indoors, right? I'm at 25,000 feet watching somebody take a pot shot at an airplane. It's not the same. Now, I've also had my entire aircraft going 0.8 the speed of sound at a mile above the earth catch on fire in the cockpit. I'm not going to be able to explain that to a dude that kicks indoors.
Exactly.
So it is so hard to try. I mean, the stress is there, the threat of death is there, the worrying about what's going on at home is there, but trying to relate to some of those stories is super difficult. And I don't know, other than keeping folks around people with the similar experiences, you can get that same type of transparency that you'd be expecting. Because, like I said, the lived experience is different. The trauma is still there. Yeah. And there's at least the avenues of helping out the trauma, but it's tough. It's really tough. Because
Well, that's why I say to people, I says, if you want to help a veteran, just show up and watch a football game with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go fishing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If they want to talk, they'll talk.
If they want to talk, just be there, right?
Yep.
You don't need to pull it out of them, particularly if you haven't been there, done that. Don't try to pull out. Don't try to be the therapist. Just
Absolutely.
be there, right?
Absolutely. And I'll also give a plug for the spouses. I know we spoke about that a little bit. And Doug, his wife, is in mental health counseling, and my wife's going down that road as well. And how big of a resource is that? Are they for people like us, but even more so for our spouses?
Yeah.
Because of the things that they deal with that we don't understand what our spouses deal with.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so important on the law enforcement side, on the fire EMS side, and then on the military side in these jobs. I feel like that is irreplaceable to be able to have those type of people supporting those programs.
And sometimes it's just relearning how to communicate with your spouse, because your spouse is your biggest support person. But
Hopefully.
you come, hopefully. I know not everyone's,
If not, make it a goal. Make it a goal too.
but so many of my soldiers ended up getting divorced after their deployment. It was heartbreaking because they couldn't relearn how to communicate. They were trying to cope with their stuff. She was trying to cope with her trauma of him or her being gone. And they couldn't come back together and, support each other. And it's unfortunate. So,
I know several women that they leave because they can't take the heartache, right? And they says, I can't take the uncertainty. It's destroying me. And they just want to walk away from it, right? And then it tears the man up inside because he wants to give them some certainty. He wants to be the provider. He wants to be the protector. Feels like he's failing because he's not the provider or the protector. He's not doing anything in the relationship. And so he puts that all onto his own head, which makes it worse, where his head is not in the game when he's out in theater. It just makes the whole thing worse. We've had Tammy Flake on from Warriors Haven up there in Park City. We've had Heath Silcox from the VFW on, and a few others. And they kind of discuss a lot of these experiences where they've talked through a lot of this event. I mean, I don't know if you know Tammy Flake's experience, but she wasn't one of those that had bullets going around or anything like that. She was in, I think she was in logistics and stockpiling all the goods and everything comes in, but she was sexually assaulted in the military.
Yep.
Because she went in at just over 17, because she graduated early, was really young.
Military sexual trauma is a whole thing.
And that's what she describes as how she was trying to get through sexual assault from other military individuals that were.
So, which is even worse because they're supposed to be your trusted brothers and everything else. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into this.
Well, I will throw out, my wife did do an internship at the Salt Lake VA, and there is an entire military sexual trauma team up there, multifaceted, multi-vector approach on taking care of it. So if any of your folks are suffering, the Salt Lake VA has a better than average / top tier military sexual victim assault program. It's awesome. It really is awesome.
One thing I'll say, and coming from working directly and being with a group of individuals that care so much about our veteran community, and really, kind of tying it to Memorial Day. This is all stuff that we wouldn't know without the losses that have happened throughout our country. Like the way that people learned how our soldiers were recuperating and survivor guilt and things after World War I, World War II, the Koreans.
Survivor guilt was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Huge thing. And the way that even then that these soldiers were reintegrate with their families. Like this is all, it all ties into this message of Memorial Day and that sacrifice. We wouldn't know some of the things that we do without some of those sacrifices. But I can say Utah is one of the unique states. We're doing it right when it comes to our vets and when it comes to supporting our active family members and supporting people when we lose people that are part of our community or they're stationed here. They're an adopted part of the community because they're here at Hill Air Force Base, or they're an active duty Army person at Camp Williams down there, part of that integration training center. Utah has so many organizations that are out there. I mentioned my organization. You've mentioned a couple of organizations. There's some nationwide organizations that are here in Utah that people don't even realize. I mean, you've got like everybody's fairly familiar, I think, with the Grunt Style brand of products. They have a foundation called Grunt Style Foundation. At the event in February that the Battle Force did at Hill, one of their representatives, Janae Sergio, Navy vet, has written a couple of books about being flawed and being imperfect and surviving some of the experiences she has. She works with the Grunt Style Foundation. Grunt Style Foundation has a sub-foundation or an association with a group called Irreverent Warriors. This just last Saturday, we did a 10-mile march through Salt Lake, and there were 200 veterans that were there. And it was all about suicide awareness, remembering those that are gone, that we've lost either to suicide or to combat, and preventing future suicides, preventing that weight, that survivor guilt, that I don't know how to handle this, by just being together. And Utah does it right. There's a lot of states that are...
And people don't realize how bad that is, because for my job, I travel the country extensively because I'm in the medical world, and I travel and treat pain patients, and I have a therapeutic laser for pain. And so I've worked with veterans. I've worked with a lot of other people. I did a lot in skin grafting, so I was working with the major hospital in Washington, D.C., putting skin grafts on stumps and stuff like that for veterans. And so I've worked a lot with that. And people really don't understand how bad the VA is in some other states. And some of the horror stories I've got. And I think the reason why we have so much support here in the United States, here in Utah, and a few other states as well, is because, honestly, it's the kind of the Christian background. There's a high belief in God, which gives people just a higher respect for their fellow man. And that really comes home when people look at people and says, no, you're a child of God, and I don't care what you went through, I'm going to be there for you. And again, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're strictly non-denominational, but it doesn't matter if you're a Bible study group, you're Episcopalian, or you're Jehovah's Witness. I don't care what it is. That God-fearing attitude brings out the heart in you and lets you kind of see the wounds and help you get out and try to repair some of those wounds.
And the sense I get in Utah is there's just a lot of gratitude. People have a high level of gratitude for veterans, for those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, comes from religion, comes from others. And veterans, when you go through these experiences, this unique perspective that you obtain from a deployment or from a difficult situation instills within you a sense of gratitude. And as a veteran, we hear it all the time. People always tell us, thank you for your service. And I've never known how to react and I still don't, because none of us veterans ever need to seek or need that recognition, but we're always grateful for
appreciation goes a long way.
Exactly. Yeah. We are always grateful, because people that say that, and they say it meaningfully, and quite often you're at an assembly or something, they'll say, veterans, will you please stand to be recognized? And I've always felt sheepish, but I've always appreciated the sentiment too.
Till you get the kick in the pants from your wife.
Yes, exactly. Get up and celebrate.
I do that to my kids too, because my sons won't stand up. I kick them in the pants all the time.
That's right. And I honestly think a part of that is that we know of those who paid a bigger sacrifice than us.
Yes.
And so we, again, almost going back to the survivor's guilt, we have some of that, because it's like I know so many people who have done far more, and they're far more deserving than I am.
Yeah. Because my deployments were, I'll be honest, my deployments were pretty easy in terms of the creature comforts. I wasn't in the Army grunt, whatever. I was in the Air Operations Center with Air Force. And, in Bosnia, I had some Rangers and Intel teams, and we just went around. But it was a more comfortable deployment. So I don't feel, even though I'm a combat veteran, I served in a combat zone, my experience was not as hard and as aggressive as some of these Vietnam, World War II, these other people, even in, some of the Marines that are kicking down doors and seeing real traumatic situations that they cannot reconcile in their heads, and they need help later. So, but I do have gratitude when people say, thank you for your service. I turn and say, thank that guy for his service.
Yeah.
That guy deserves, all the accolades.
Well, kind of speaking of this is my son sent this to me about 3 days ago, and this is his unit. Any guesses where he's sitting at right now?
But that rock looks like a bear under the flag.
Any guesses where my son's at right there?
Oh, in the picture.
This looks like, it's mountainous.
Yeah.
It's
That could be just about
it could be anywhere. We're in Honduras,
narrowed it down.
Afghanistan,
Countries with mountains.
Iran definitely has mountains.
Alaska.
That looks like Europe.
It's definitely Europe.
Into the Alps. So Germany.
This looks like Germany.
It's Alps, but it's not Germany.
Flat. And Switzerland.
Are we looking at the Eagle's Nest?
Oh, wow.
Batter up.
Yep.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, my son just sent me that at the Eagle's Nest there. One of my dreams. So I told him when I saw this, the two dreams I've always had is to go see Normandy, Utah Beach, Omaha Beach, where it started, and to see the Eagle's Nest where it all ended. And that's the greatest generation, right? Is the people that went through that type of trauma.
Yes.
And what they went through. Most of them won't talk about it, but everybody's seen Band of Brothers, and it's real. It's horrific. But the point I want to make with that is, when we did World War II, we had a goal in mind. We took territory. We kept the territory. We had a goal to defeat the end.
Yep.
Starting in Vietnam, the politics got in the way, and we lost the Vietnam War, frankly, because the politicians back home just chose to. We just pulled out, right? But you take that more modern into what we did with Afghanistan. So we sat there in Afghanistan for almost 20 years, and then we just had this horrific pullout during Biden, right? So now we take that home to the veterans, and so now you got a whole bunch of veterans, and I've spoke with a few of them. Sean Ryan spoke with a few of them. You got veterans coming home that have lost really good buddies, lost limbs.
What?
Sean Ryan spoke to one of those guys that was at the gate, the West Gate that blew up, and he lost both his legs and one of his arms during the pullout. Saw the guy, knew the guy was there. His superior said, we don't have the right to shoot him. We can't shoot him. And they said, he's sitting right there. Killed a whole bunch of people. They had Taliban people taking Afghan people that had been working for them and had become good friends with them, were getting turned away at the gate, and the soldiers are trying to bring them in, but the superiors won't let them in.
Yep.
And then Taliban would literally, on purpose, take them 20 feet away from the gate and shoot them in the head, purposely in front of the soldiers' eyes.
Yep.
And then you see this pullout. So now what you're facing with the veterans is, I went through all this sacrifice. I had friends die. Limbs lost. For what? It was complete waste. Meant nothing. I meant nothing. My friends mean nothing. And they go down that dark tunnel. So as veterans, how do you deal with that? Because that's just as bad as...
So I was working during that time. I wasn't downrange or anything. I was working with a group here in Utah that was doing support. I think that's a good way of wording that. As a contractor, and I can tell you that it is not lost on the people that were directly involved in trying to mitigate as much as possible that the framing, trying to be really cautious in how I'm saying this.
Good idea.
The framing of certain aspects were a complete success, because that's I think we're all familiar with some of the framing around this was a great success. I think if there was maybe some acknowledgement of maybe that one portion of what you did was a success, but the way that we treated
Well,
end of Afghanistan.
it's success in spite of.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think most vets would be happy with just some accountability.
Yeah.
If there was accountability in the system for people that are making decisions above the military, I think it would be a lot easier for
But with accountability, without accountability, question would be is mentally, how do you
mentally,
deal with that, or how do you help a vet deal with
because
they don't think anything was worth it?
well, how many of their brothers came home? How many did we save? I mean, we had C-17s loaded to the gill, people cargo strapped to the floor. I mean, you can't put a price on that. You cannot. You got as many folks as you can, right? That's like telling a firefighter you missed one person in the building. Yeah, but I got 12 out, man. What do you want? I did everything I possibly could. Are you going to feel bad about it? Yeah. But that's when, and you know, they say it in the military all the time, you're going to have to compartmentalize, get treatment for it, talk through it if you can, but you are going to have to deal with that because there are certain things you can't control. You cannot control it.
I would just add a short plug that at the end of the day, we have to go back to, you know, we've been kind of speaking about hinting around this, but we joined for a reason, and we knew kind of or know kind of what the job entails, and we're willing to ride the train wherever it goes. And so going back to when people say thank you for your service, you're like, well, we know far more people have done more, but then also down this train of we said we would go and do what was needed to be done, what we were asked to do, and there was no back end deal. There's no understanding.
You already signed the check.
It's going to come.
Yeah.
This check was already signed, and it just wasn't fully explained. It was, I know that I'm doing this, and I accept the fact that I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And I think that's one thing that it's so easy in life as well to get so far away from the trunk and get on the branches of things. And it's like, well, go back to the core foundation. We joined because we wanted to serve. We didn't know if we were actually going to survive the whole time, if we were going to stay in the whole time, for buddies we're going to make it, or what the outcome of whatever conflict or the world direction is. But at the end of the day, we jumped on that train.
I was in pilot training when the second plane hit the tower. I was getting ready to take off for my first instrument rides. And it was turn around. I was taxiing. And they said, turn around, the nation to stop launch.
Jeez.
So I pulled out of my parking spot, did a 360, pulled right back in my parking spot, and walked in. And they had, everyone was an alarm black, Threatcon Delta, base lockdown.
Shut down.
Everyone kind of piled into one of the guys' houses, and we just watched.
Yeah.
That was the next 20 years of my career. You know, you watched this thing unfold. I spent more than 3 years of my life in the Middle East doing the things.
But I think it's interesting you mentioned that. So like I was a senior in high school when that happened. My dad is a 135 pilot as well. He was with the 168 at that time up in Alaska. And the towers hit, and I remember being woken up by my mom, and she said the U.S. just went to war. And I was like, that I wasn't aware of anything. Like I listen to my dad in conversations. I'm dialed in enough to know when things are going. And we all got together as a family. My dad was already in his flight suit, which was unusual for like 5 o'clock in the morning. And we decided to have a family prayer. And I remember my dad couldn't even talk. He just broke down because we hadn't seen the towers hit. We'd seen the one tower that was hit, both towers had been hit. And as he was getting ready to leave, the first tower fell.
Yeah.
And my dad left. This is up in Alaska. And I didn't see my dad for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
He was just gone. that base was shut down. I had friends that went to the high school on the Air Force Base in Alaska, and they just showed up at my high school in little podunk North Pole, Alaska, and like hung out so that they could get credit. There was the school district up there, I guess, did something where it was like, students aren't going to be able to go to their school because the base is entirely locked down.
Yep.
Nobody is coming on or off any of the bases up in and around Fairbanks. And that was like 3 weeks. 3 weeks of people's lives. If you were in the military, like, not to say that if you weren't in the military, you didn't experience things, but as a young person who was very impressionable at that time, like, you saw, like, it was life-changing. And none of this generation that is currently around, like, they volunteer, and amazing that they volunteer not having experienced that same type of life-changing moment. But like, for me as a young man in high school, I remember seeing that, like, the world is going to be completely different now.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what that looked like, but I knew I was old enough.
Things changed. It was another Pearl Harbor moment, you know. It was, I think we woke up the sleeping giant, and you saw everybody come together with resolve, because that was such a punch in the face to America. Nobody even expected that America could be attacked. I mean, the most powerful military in the history of the world, and this happened. And so, you know, when you got good leaders, good decisions and bad decisions can save lives or can hurt lives. You lose lives, like you're talking about the pullout out of Afghanistan. It was so botched because of the way that we did this, some of these pullouts with the other previous administration, that you lost lives. You know, there was other ways to do it. So I'm always a peace through strength guy. I'm always, you know, America needs to do things correctly. But yeah, 9/11, I mean, we all can remember where we were, what we were doing, what we were thinking when that happened. And as an intel guy, John and I, and you guys we're all related to the intel stuff. We look at the world via threats now. Like, what is the threats? And what do we have to do to mitigate the threat? Foreign and domestic. We all took that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we have to struggle. We always have to struggle for the fight, to do what's right, to keep our families safe, to keep America safe from foreign and domestic threats now.
You're right. And some of the things even worry me and concern me on the local level and the state level is, how many leaders do we have that are looking down, forward thinking what these threats are going to be looking like? What are we doing about it? Are we doing anything about it?
Proactive
or
or reactive?
Or are we just waiting to get slapped and then we're going to do something? It's like, no. Again, the military dumps hundreds of thousands of dollars into us as intelligence officers to find out what those threats are, and then put it all together. And what does this mean? Like, and then we have these centers of gravity, how hub and spoke, how everything's so interconnected, and how certain decisions can have all these trickle-down effects. And I feel like government hasn't done a great job with perceiving these things and having communication with people outside of their realm, because it's like, if I make a decision, I don't want it to affect you. I don't want it to affect the school district or whatever else in a negative way. But I feel like we don't have those communication lines to be able to deal with these problems. We're just so siloed in many cases, and that's greatly frustrating.
Yeah, you really, you know, sometimes a decision sounds like a great decision, and sometimes they pass laws and legislation to have this great decision. But then it's so hard to undo the law when the unintended consequences end up being horrible. And so, you know, that's why, I mean, I'm glad you're stepping forward in your race. I'm stepping forward in my race. I think we just need a diversity of thought and ideas so that, as, you know, we make decisions in our respective positions, we don't harm, we don't create harm, we don't cause harm to people. We anticipate the threats. We anticipate the potential harm that this can cause down the road.
You're right. I think a lot of the problems is that there's just not a lot of good strategic thinking. Like, bird's eye view, that's what That's what our leaders should have on things. But it feels like we're running around through grass that's above our head, and we just don't know the direction. Everyone's just kind of running in circles. Like, can we get somebody up on the mountainside to kind of see which direction we want to start plowing and going towards? So that way we can make meaningful change and actually stop it negatively affecting individual lives, and we don't get strangled out by taxation at the state, local, federal levels. Like, some of these things are just so frustrating. And I know that's one of the reasons why it caused us to start looking at this and getting in our races, because there's not a lot of accountability. It seems like there's a lot of personal interests in individuals that are running these things. Mm-hmm. And it's not going back to the patriotic, focused on families, focused on our community, selflessness of giving back and trying to do what's right without us in the mix. And that's one thing I love about the military side, again, is that blank check. Okay, I'm not looking for much in return. I'm looking for getting on the train and doing what I can to make this better.
That's something else that veterans have to deal with, right, is leadership. So my son came to me. Right.
That was a little too obvious. So sorry. Sorry.
My son came to me, this same son that is there at the Eagle's Nest came to me right before he said, I want to enlist. And my other two sons had already enlisted. And I frankly told him, I says, you absolutely do not have my permission to enlist if Trump does not win. You're not going in there if there's going to be another Biden administration. And I said, it's not going to happen. So I don't care what you tell your recruiter. You're postponing your actual enlistment. You can get everything ready to go, but you're waiting until after the election. I'm just telling you that right now.
And that mirrors the recruitment numbers. The recruitment numbers were so low, and they split. They've gone back up.
Yeah, because there's a lack of respect by some leadership. I mean, I go back to Benghazi, right? Just such a lack of respect for the soldiers by some leaders, and which is why I greatly appreciate how Trump does things right now. I mean, with Venezuela, with Maduro, in and out, right? I'm going to limit as much as possible any type of harm to the American soldier. There was one soldier hurt with one bullet wound, and that was that, in and out and done. With currently what's going on with Iran right now, no boots on the ground, no additional forever war. I'm not getting involved. I don't want any deaths, right? He's referred to Ukraine war constantly. He says, look, I get both sides. I'm not taking Russia's side. I'm not taking Ukraine's side. All I want is the death to stop. There's been 1 million lives lost already. Mm-hmm. There's a significant difference between a president that really respects the soldier and really doesn't want anybody to die and respects that from other leaders, from Obama to Biden to others that just, they don't have that respect. So how as a veteran do you mentally work underneath that? I mean, you guys have to tell me.
Yeah, I wanted to share one thing and then get Doug's comments on this.
That'll be entertaining.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm unconstrained.
Yeah. That's usually my most favorite people to talk to, honestly, that when they move on or when they retire, they move out of those positions because the canonists. But one thing that I noticed at my level when we start talking about presidential leadership is going back even to, we start talking about Vietnam and other conflicts, where politics start getting involved in the military, and that's not good for the military. I've noticed it through several different presidencies, been 3 different presidencies so far, is when commanders can be commanders versus commanders being heavily influenced or directed what to do. The commanders need to be able to be commanders, and there's a reason for that.
Well, there's a massive difference with Hegseth coming in when they go back to, we're war fighters. We're not... pansy putting LGBT,
and even down to like a company commander or a brigade or battalion or operation support squadron commander, like even those levels. And you can talk about that, boss.
Oh no, the ability to get the job done is paramount. Hegseth, for the most part, I think he's done a pretty good job. There are certain things that he's initiated that I'm like, I think he'd probably better think about that one a little bit. Like there was one he brought out about removing JAGs out of the local base level and letting civilian lawyers do it because lawyers are expensive. Well, dude, love you, but UCMJ is different than civilian law. You're going to be paying a civilian lawyer a hell of a lot more than you're going to be paying a full-time active duty guy or guard guy because, like it or not, they're tapped out by law on how much they can get paid. If you go to some law firm, they're going to start charging you by the billable hour, and you know what that's going to be like if you ever done anything legal on the civilian side.
So you think with the old government's going to get
you're like,
overbilled?
just there's certain things like it might be a good idea. I haven't seen the math, so on first look, I'm like, I don't know. But enough deference to get the job done and working within the rules is about as paramount to leadership as possible, because not every situation requires the same solution. I mean, there is everybody looks like a nail when you're a hammer. I get that. But I might deal with a problem with you different than I would deal with a problem with you and a different problem with you, depending on what's going on. Like, we had an individual that was wanting to provide material support to Ukraine while in uniform. You're like, yeah, bro, that's against the law. And I will crush your soul if you do that without my permission and you're not getting it. So I'll give you a choice. You can either resign and I will get you out of the military in the next 4 hours, or you can deal with the consequences. So talk amongst your team. And he had his leadership, his counselor, all the things there. And I walked back in the room. He said, I'd like to leave the military. Okay, we can do that. Because whether or not I personally agree with his commitment to these folks, and the backstory was he used to be a California Army dude, their state partner. And if you're not familiar with the state partner, every Guard unit has a strategically important country that they partner with and teach them things and improve their overall interior, exterior motivations and capabilities. But he had trained some of these Ukrainian guys. He knew them personally. He's watching them getting blown up by a superpower, essentially. He's like, I have to go help. I love where your head's at. I, as the representative of the government at the time, cannot allow that to happen while you're wearing our uniform. So choose. And we out-processed him. Civilian employment not compatible with military service.
Yeah.
Please leave. But you also have the guy that decides, I'm going to get drunk and break into somebody's house and then claim ignorance. You're like, bro, I'm going to crush your soul. And that's a completely different mindset. But I was thankfully given enough leeway in most cases to where I could deal with issues the way I thought best. But I also went around and got the appropriate amount of input. So I talked to my lawyer. I talked to the HR, or lack of a better term, of what we had in my organization. I talked to the investigator general. So I had all these different perspectives. I had kind of what I thought was my left and right boundaries. And what I found was, if you let people deal, sorry, I'm not used to microphones or anything. If you let people deal with problems at their level with correct guardrails, that one, the trust, if it's been built up, that takes that penguin off your iceberg. That's their deal. I trust your judgment. If I don't trust your judgment, I'm going to take that problem from you. I am not going to dictate to you how you're going to solve that problem. And that's what I've seen where a lot of problems arise is, let's say you're my supervisor and John's in trouble and I'm going to give him this punishment. And you're like, no, it needs to be worse. Okay. You deal with it now. You don't tell me how I'm going to do it, because now you have created a us versus you, because I don't like what you're saying. So if you have a problem, I'm Paul, this is between y'all. I ain't in this problem anymore. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in different areas, to where someone doesn't like how something's being handled, but they're pushing it down on someone lower than them to execute the way they want it to be executed. That is a false or a bad way to run an organization.
How do you deal with changing administrations when the policies, the rules of engagement, particularly the rules of engagement, completely change from one day to the next? What's going through your mind as an active soldier when that happens?
Well, for me, it was, we had a couple transgender troops in the organization. Some of them were great, some of them were not. And it was nothing to do with their gender identification at the time. What did have to do with it was my responsibilities to the organization. So when policy changed, I said, hey, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm going to tell you right now, my authority as your commander stops at the fence line. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, and it's going to be not involving me at all. So I would highly suggest that you take all of the paperwork precautions that you need to take, because when they ask for it, you better be ready because they're just going to ship you off. There's going to be a solution and it's not going to be debatable. So keeping people informed via transparency, like I have no opinion because I was kind of in the Mattis camp. I really don't care who you sleep with as long as you do your job. And we had some folks that were really good at doing their job and they just happened to be transgender. Don't care, do your job. But the policy is above my head. So I will help them make an informed decision, but I don't influence. I tell them what the limit of my authority is. I tell them how they can prepare and protect themselves the best way they can possible. And as far as ROE go, that's probably the most distinct one. Some of the problems I had as a junior commander in different organizations, not even in the state, was I had a conversation with one of my intel officers when I was a captain and a section commander. And she said, what do you think about women in combat roles? I'm like, I don't care, man. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, okay, let's put this in a perspective. How about you and I go take a shower together and you be perfectly fine with it? And her husband walked in at the same time. He's like, who's showering my wife? So it was entertaining. I said, the problem that you're giving me is you're giving me a rule. You're giving me no guidance, but you're holding me accountable for the result. And I don't know what the result's going to be. So if you're a transgender person, who has to watch you do a urinalysis? Does that have to be another transgender person? Does that have to be the one that you're identifying with or the one that you're physically compatible with? Who is it? Because if I screw up, I'm going to jail or I'm losing my job. And there's no rules for it. I brought this up to the head of the Air Force JAG Corps, the head medical officer in the Air Force, and the head chaplain in the Air Force. I had a member that decided to change their gender from a state that doesn't accept changing foundational documents in the state. So they wouldn't change their birth certificate, essentially. Well, they live here. Well, I can't update DEERS, which is the record of, or the sits on my record for the military, without a foundational document change. Well, unless you complete your transition or whatever you're doing within 36 months, I have to order you to detransition. Well, this person's not changing their state of residency, and that state is not willing to make the change to their document. What do I do? And I had 3 2-stars and above going,
Nobody had names.
bro, you've been doing this 20 years longer than I have.
Not this.
Not
this, is a
this,
whole new world.
but this is your problem. This is not a me problem. It's become a me problem, but there's no guidance. And you're just throwing dudes to the wolves. Now you give me a tactical problem set, like I need you to kill this person or this system at this time.
Done.
Got it. I have more than enough training to make sure that that happens. You saw it in Venezuela. You give me enough planning time and unlimited resources to take care of what I need to, or unlimited access, I will rock your world. It does not matter who, it does not matter where, it does not matter when. I will kill everyone you want me to kill and save everyone you want me to save without any issues, barring 2 to 5%. You give me some of these personnel problems or some of these random policies that I have to deal with that are well outside the scope of tactical responsibility with no guidance and complete ownership of threat and mitigation, that's where I have the problem. So if you want to give commanders tactical authority and withhold other things, fine. If you want to deal with all my HR problems, batter up. Enjoy.
But you can see the problem with, this is top-down leadership where everybody's got confused and we can change, science and we can change all this. And Pete Hegseth comes in and brings that clarity. Like, you're a boy, you're a girl. This is how we fight. This is, everything's clarified again.
Sure.
Versus, upper brass, leadership start saying that the greatest existential threat is global warming. I'm like, you're the leader of the military and you're worried about global warming. How about worrying about war fighters and how we fight and stay in your lane? So your question is quite interesting because we've all been trained to be followers. We go through basic training and officer basic course and all that stuff. We are trained first and foremost to be followers, and we follow our commander-in-chief. And sometimes our commander-in-chief does not like the military, and they're actively hostile against it, and decisions they make kill people. You know, they have blood on their hands, Benghazi and other things we talked about. But we have to follow orders no matter what. And it really gets muddy when rules of engagement come down, the politics of the rules of engagement comes down where you can shoot, but you can't shoot, but imagine a police officer, the rules of engagement for police officers, what you can and can't do and what you have to be careful of. So when you train a soldier, when you train a police officer to neutralize a threat, you got to give them some leniency. If in their best judgment, some guy looked like they had a gun and they ended up neutralizing the threat and it ended up killing them. It's like, you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt because we trained them to do that. We can't hold them accountable because some liberal came in to try and intercept in a law enforcement activity and happened to have a weapon, and in the chaos got shot and killed. Now everybody's mad at police officers. I'm sorry, police officers, military people, they are trained to do that. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt and leniency. We can't keep throwing them to the judges and, in our best estimation, you did wrong, therefore you're going to prison for 20 years. That's wrong. So,
Well, they had the rules of engagement where it started out that if they had a gun, you can shoot them, right? But then during the Obama administration, they says, well, they could have a gun, but if they have pointed at the ground, you can't shoot. And you have to wait till they raise it. But if they turn around and start walking away from you, you can't shoot them as well. And then they made the
and then
rules
you
of
got to
engagement.
pull pepper spray instead, or you got to.
Well, I'm just talking about the military, right? Military rules of engagement. And then the worst part about that is they weren't even giving them the benefit of the doubt. They would just bring them up on murder charges. And so you could be brought up as an American soldier for murder charges that you committed in Afghanistan or Iraq. I mean, how do you work with that? You just stop working. Like, I'm not going to put myself at risk. We're not tough. But yet then you still get stuck downwind of bullets. And I mean, what do you do with that?
I look at this. I appreciate what you said, Doug, by the way, because I've always suspected. So I'm a not lower enlisted. I'm an NCO tier enlisted dude. So I'm an E6. So I have just enough, I guess, responsibility, authority that I can get in a lot of trouble, but not enough that I can really impact. Have a heavy impact on things. And I think,
Well, you should have an impact on the 15 to 20 people that you
on my people.
It's your scope.
But in the grand scheme of the wing that I might be attached to, but my perspective has always been, and I've never been in a situation where I felt like my leadership, and I've been in several different units. I've been in a bunch of guard units and a reserve unit. I've never felt like my leadership is trying to implement some kind of political ideology. And I think for the most part, especially I'm gonna venture to say that most 06s and lower, they're not interested in that. They want to make sure that their people are trained, that they know how to do their job, because in the end, what we don't want is to have to include their name in a Memorial Day celebration. And I think when politicians, I really hope I don't get in trouble for any of the things I'm saying, when politicians on either side use their position to try to force policies that affect our ability because outside of the Air Force, most of the time it's dudes like me that are going to be the losses. With the exception of pilots in the Air Force, it's usually going to be, E6s, E7s, that are going to have to pay that ultimate price. And so when politicians do things to win a demographic of votes, or when they do things to try and appeal to, this is gonna make me sound like a nicer person. Like I hate rice. I like kind. Not a huge fan of nice.
But then it's nice at whose expense?
Yeah, and that's when I think, at least for me as an enlisted dude, I go, why does it feel like this is being shoved on me? I don't have a choice. I'm not gonna be able to fight this anyway. I can go to my leader, I can go to my frontline commander and be like, I don't like that. You'd be like, it's not against the law. So like that whole we obey our orders. In the 21 years that I've been in, I've never had an illegal order given to me. I've had orders that I'm like, that's dumb. Or I like all of us are like, that's stupid.
Yep.
He'll paint the grass green.
But none of us have ever had to do something where we're like, dude,
That's illegal.
that's illegal. So when we have leaders now that are like, don't obey illegal orders. Sorry, I'm gonna say it like that because that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Say that like. You don't sound smart to me. You just sound like you're appealing to a voter demographic.
Yeah, so now we have to choose
You're not
which
helping me
one's illegal, which one's an illegal, which one's a moral order, which would.
Well, then you're passing the blame down to the individual line workers. If you encourage them not to follow illegal orders,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, well, what position is that?
There are so many levels in between POTUS or SecDef saying something and me telling an NCO to go execute that if it hasn't stopped between now and then, I'm going to go 98% of the time it's probably legal. And if it gets my hair standing up on the back of my neck, I'm still going to go talk to my JAG.
Yeah.
This isn't rocket surgery, man. I mean, it's not that hard. It's really not. And I think most of the folks in the military, at least when I was in, were like, okay, I'll take that. I'll take that in due consideration.
It happens on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like
Yes.
I'm not a left
No.
or sorry that's not a true statement. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I am a staunch conservative, constitutional conservative, and I'm almost a one subject voter. Like, if you try to do anything to my right to bear arms, that's where I'm gonna like everything else, transgender stuff. I'm like, it's weird. I don't care.
I don't have an opinion.
As long as you don't tell me like I have to treat you like you're like nobody treats me like I'm special. Why do I have to treat you like you're special? And that's where I come. That's like where I am on pretty much everything except my guns. If you try to take my guns, I'm gonna be
So,
vocal and
The
loud.
military needs to remain apolitical.
yeah, they really do.
The funniest
Be doing this.
The funniest thing is when you said that's stupid. That's the expressions of all three of you guys at the same time. It's hilarious.
Eyes rolling.
It has
Start
to
like
know,
rule.
decisions
That's
get
stupid.
made by these leaders, and sometimes you question. Like, I remember being in Bosnia, and it was General Shinseki. He was the 4-star.
Yep.
And he came out and he said, everybody's going to wear a black beret now. So we all would be feeling
Yeah,
like
like the
Army
same.
Rangers, you know? And I'm in my guard unit. This was like $1 million decision, you know? So what a waste. So my guard unit, we're all wearing these muffin-looking, ridiculous black berets to feel like we were Army Rangers. Then what are the Army Rangers gonna wear now? A black beret, and we wear a black beret. I mean, it's decisions like this that sometimes you're rolling your eyes. You're like, okay, I will follow orders, but good grief, I'm gonna tell you. And a good leader would actually talk to their soldiers.
You have that option, and then you had another one that happened last year or year before. Commander down, I think it was in a, I don't want to call him out. It was in a desert location.
I shouldn't have called them out.
It was like 120 degrees on the ground, and he's got maintainers out there burning their hands, sweating like dogs. And they're like, hey, boss, we have these issued boonie hats. Can we just wear our boonie hats on the flight line to give us a little bit of sun protection? And as an 06, I would have been like, why is your group commander not telling you yes? I'm not even involved in this conversation. Just go do the things. The wing commander called the commander of Air Combat Command, a 4-star, and asked,
Yeah. And that goes down to,
That's like,
yeah. Well, one of the issues.
and then he said no. So then he comes back, and again, it goes back to,
Safety.
I think that was a pretty good risk assessment. They could have done that at a local level, probably two steps below you, and then you're involving really senior leadership for no reason. Yeah. And then you get an answer you don't like, so now you have to comply.
Yep.
And all of that sounds dumb to me.
Yep.
So if you would have taken okay, what is the worst thing that's going to happen to you as a commander if I say you can wear a boonie hat and someone above me says, take it off?
Exactly.
Yeah, take it off.
Yes.
Take it off.
I
sorry,
exceeded
sir.
my authority.
But yes,
looking
at
out
the end
for
of the
the
day,
health and safety.
yeah, you're looking out for your people at the end of the day. That's
That's why you guys
affecting
get your master's degree.
That's
That's
right.
the kind of thing you guys like.
Well, it's like the Army still doesn't let you put your hands in your pockets when it's cold outside.
Yeah,
You're like, it
Well,
just is what it is.
It reminds me, I went through read General Mattis's book, Mad Dog Mattis's book, not too long ago, and it reminds me of the analogy he gives in there with the encouraging the mentality of the mother may I. So you have to ask to do anything, and then once you go down that road, your boss, you'd be like, this guy's incompetent. Yeah, he's incompetent. So now I have to get more involved, and then there's not that decentralized command, it's not that trust that there should be. I should be able to go make decisions. If I go and ask my boss every single time before I do something, then I'm going to have that mother may I. My brain's always going to stop when it hits a wall versus using that creative thinking, that forward thought and vision. It's like, okay, these are the processes. I need to go and start doing them. But if I can't ever make decisions, I'm going to hit that wall every time. And I'm never going to get past that next step. I'm never going to be able to improve as a leader and also with that foresight. And so I think that's why we also be able to give that to our people that we supervise and lead so that they can feel empowered to make decisions. Because going all the way back around this discussion is the people that know the job best are the people doing the job every single day. And if we don't trust them to make the decisions, then we shouldn't be micromanaging them. They know what the job is. We should have that strategic view and vision of the future, the direction, the commander's intent, the boss's intent.
Commander's intent and appropriate risk assessment is the key to all of this. Because you might make a decision at the line level. Like, it's much easier to use an impact gun than it is to use a torque wrench.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the torque wrench is there.
Right.
Right.
No reason.
And I'm not accepting the risk that you can let off the trigger fast enough to torque that right.
Yep.
That's one thing. But if you give them the goal or the guideline and say, here are your boundaries, this is the amount of risk I'm willing to accept at your level, at your supervisor's level, all the way up to me,
Absolutely.
then there's zero reason why you can't do this.
It is.
Robin Olds had us. You guys know Robin Olds, the mustache, and Air Force fighter pilot, F Force.
I try.
Oh man, it's not legal if you do. So.
Yeah.
But it was full twist, and it was a middle finger to leadership of you're not helping us out. Well, a student in Air War College wrote him a letter and was like, hey, can you give me your perspective on leadership while I was still alive? And he wrote back this letter, and it was not kind. It was, great question. Let me give you an example. When I was in 06 in Vietnam, I had the responsibility to hire, fire, feed, clothe, house, pay, discipline, and inter those that got killed under my command. And I was a 35-year-old full bird colonel, prior enlisted Marine. As a 1-star, I have none of those responsibilities any longer. So tell me if we're going in the right direction or not. And that's how he signed the letter off, was, that's awesome. We are not going in the right spot. He goes, I was responsible for the entire base, everything from its combat employment to its defense to its sustainment. And as a 1-star, he's like, at the Pentagon, I get coffee. Like, this is ridiculous. So giving the people at the right level the appropriate amount of responsibility, the appropriate amount of risk assessment, and a guiding, goal to achieve,
Open door policy.
just let it ride. And if you have a question, come and ask.
And that left and right, like there's so many I see that frustrates me on the law enforcement side is there's with a lot of the leadership portions that I'd call it, there's not a lot of left and right fields of vision that they're giving you. Like, these are your boundaries. We don't really get a lot of that. And then again, the forward thinking mission. And so it's the commander's intent. I always go back to that. That is so easy. The boss's intent. What does the boss want? Because I shouldn't go down and try to micromanage and tell you how to do your job. Say, hey, this is the result we are after. Go figure it out. And what that does is it increases your ingenuity and your creativity to maybe do a better job, faster job, and it surprised me because you think about things differently than I do.
And if you can't, give them a way to measure it.
Yeah, the mistake that managers that are highly directive micromanagers are making is they assume their way is the only way and the best way, but they're not tapping into the strengths and talents of all the people that work for them. So if you're a micromanager, highly directive manager applying a cookie cutter approach, here's the parameters, here's how I would do it, you're not an effective leader. If you can't show that you trust your lower subordinate leaders to be able to make decisions, and then if it fails, you come in and correct and put guardrails. But effective leadership is being able to trust your lower line leaders. And what will happen is they will have more trust in you, more confidence in you, more support for you. This is almost, I used to tell my junior soldiers, this is a sheep herder versus a shepherd. And the difference is a shepherd, the sheep trust him. They'll follow him everywhere. And because he'll go to bat against the big bad wolf when he comes. He'll put his life on the line. But a sheep herder threatens, micromanages, uses a big stick, and those sheep are nervous and they minimally perform and they kind of just go here and there, and you can't force them into their hole. So you need leaders that are shepherds. And shepherds, the best attribute, and I'll tell you, Jesus Christ, he was the ultimate leader. And the greatest attribute he had was charity and love. And if a leader genuinely has that for his subordinates, man, you win. They'll do everything. They'll go to bat for him and everything. And you can tell leaders that don't care and ones that do. And so when you're talking about commander or chief, you can tell the leaders that don't care for the military. And so you minimally follow. You just kind of, you're got a sheep herder boss that you're just kind of trying to
And
comply
even in
with.
the military, if that's the way you are as the commander in chief, then just leave me alone.
Yes.
Like, just don't actively work against me and we'll be fine, right? Because let the military business stay in the military.
Because your subordinates are brilliant, intelligent, trained, and frankly, half of them could do a better job than you. You just have to understand that me going into the legislature, I'm not going to go in and pretend like I have all the answers and do it my way or the highway. I am hoping for my constituents to give me feedback. Right. Hey, this is something that's broken. This is what I need to be fixed. You go and becoming a sheriff, you've got a whole body of people with all this experience that are going to come to you and present, here's some ways that I think we can tweak and change and fix. And whatever. And I don't see John as like, no, this is my way because I'm experienced or whatever,
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, not interested in doing that, honestly. And I feel like the leader of an organization, they're the ones that are the ultimate accountable person. They also are the ones with the vision, and they're also the ones that get in the resources and support to the folks doing the job every single day. The only reason why administrator or top leader exists is because of the work everybody below is doing. So what can you do to advocate to make them better? And I like to use the analogy too. Who's the best person at who's the most ingenuity, or who has the most ingenuity when we start talking about third generation farmer, CEO of John Deere? I promise you that third generation farmer is even the most creative and the most have the ability to be able to combat problems, figure solutions out. And so it shouldn't be going all the way up to the boss all the time. Sometimes the boss definitely has to get in there, but the boss needs to be able to listen to his people to be able to make those decisions. So that way their lives are easier. That way, especially when we start talking about military and public safety, we don't get in this job for the money. That is for sure. We get into it because we want to give back. We have a focused mindset. And if we're not getting that return, we're going to go elsewhere. Yep. We're going to find that somewhere else because we're not getting that return. We're not making that difference that we're seeking.
So the boss should be the sword and shield for the organization.
Yeah. You find a lot of leaderships that put agenda before people.
Yeah. You come up, at least the way I ran my organization was there was the strategic vision. You gave them where we're going. You gave them how they're going to be graded, because that's one of the bigger problems is I tell you, I want you to take that hill. Well, how am I being graded? Is it how fast, how thoroughly, how many people am I allowed to use? If you don't tell them how they're going to be graded, they're going to do it, whatever, and you can't get pissed at them. So tell them how they're going to be graded. But moving that direction, you also have to protect them from the stupid that is above you.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't get is, at least my replacement, I got a funny note from him. He's like, man, I understand why Foster had that expression on his face a lot of the time. Because there were things that they never saw and they were never supposed to see, because that's my problem to deal with. That's not your problem. Yeah. You've probably heard it. You don't bitch down, you bitch up.
Yeah, exactly. So
You don't complain about pay to a guy that's making half.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. And you don't complain about boss level problems to people that are worried about job competency. Like, technically proficient should not be worried about Codel engagement. You know, there are spheres of responsibility, and you don't lay your problems on someone that it's not their job. You give them the problems they need to have.
So like we're talking about leadership and all these things. I once heard I had a leader, a senior enlisted leader, who wasn't really even my senior enlisted leader. He was giving like a talk, and all the NCOs and senior NCOs were allowed to go. And he said, leadership is just one half of the coin. And I know that we hear leadership and followership, but followership's the other half of that coin. But there is just as much influence on leadership from good followership. For instance, if you're a leader and you're struggling with good followership, probably all of your people aren't terrible people. It might be worth looking more in the mirror and your style of leadership. And that same individual, he said, the best leaders that are out there are not looking at how to make themselves look good. They are doing everything they can to make everyone that they have any type of influence over look like the best of the best. Because if they look the best of the best, then at some point they're going to look good too. But they're not going to worry about that themselves. Yeah. And when we talked about like,
Reflected glory is
removing handcuffs, removing things, I know because we're both still in. Did Chief Wolf, did he come speak at the Guard? Did you guys see Chief Wolf? So one of the things that Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Chief Wolf, he's the current Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, that he is trying to encourage leaders on both sides to do, when we talked about like handcuffs and can we do this, can we do that, is like boonie hats, grain sifts. He said, well, what's the worst that happens if you let some of your people try out their ideas, especially if it's minimal cost or no cost to you, and has the potential to have significant rewards for how you do things. Like, what's the risk of that? We talk about RMF, risk management framework, like seems like kind of a no-brainer. And his boss, the current chief of staff of the Air Force, I'm going to butcher his name, General Wilsbach. His response to the chief, when the chief was first kind of talking about doing things like this, was they were at some other meeting, where the chief is talking to it, and the chief of staff was like, yes, you have permission. It was like
explicit.
It was just like, there you go. And he answers to the Secretary of War, who answers to the President. It sounds like you're good. Like our leadership is trying at this point to let people try to be innovative, to try to think outside the box. And that's refreshing.
It is.
Because it takes a load off of you guys.
Well, it does, but you're going to have the tense, they call it the pugger factor, right? You're going to watch the first guy that has something fail in their organization, and they're going to watch and see what happens.
Everybody's watching. Yeah.
Because, and it's not a judge. It's okay, you let this kid do this, something bad happened, and whatever, everyone showed up late to work, whatever. It doesn't have to be horrible. But what's his career path? Mm-hmm. Did he get fired? Did he move on another rank, or did he move to a better job, or did he kind of get shoved into a corner? Because that's how people judge on whether or not it's safe. And that takes a year or more to understand. Because the first guy, when I was coming through as a senior major, junior lieutenant colonel, we had a guy that was the wing commander in MacDill Air Force Base. He goes, "Hey, boss, we're not ready for our nuclear inspection." And everyone's like, "Oh, we're about to get fired." And to their credit, the Air Force Inspection Agency said, "Okay, what do you need for help?" And they sent them a bunch of folks. They sent them a bunch of subject matter experts. They got them spun up. 6 months later, they passed their inspection, no issues. And there were people watching that dude for probably about 2 years to see if he got pigeonholed, to see if stepping up and saying, "I have an issue," kind of goes back to the mental health thing. Stepping out and saying, "I have a problem," whether or not that's going to damage you in the future. And thankfully it did not. He actually moved on and did some great things. But it's, especially for the guys in the active duty side, where you are one mistake, legitimately one mistake.
That's what's hard, because how do you change that culture? And obviously, we're all in the military, and it's a very bureaucratic machine. You talk about the efficiencies of the VA or the inefficiencies of the VA. It's because of there's a lot of rules and bureaucracy and checks and balances and stuff that have been implemented into this giant framework of this machine that it's hard to negotiate. So every time a commander wants to make a decision, he's like, "Well, what are the rules? Only read the textbook." It's not the spirit of the law. It's like the letter of the law. The textbook says you got to do it this way, and nobody dares move against it. So I appreciate the commanders trying to say, give them autonomy and give them flexibility, and don't spank them, when they make mistakes. And that's kind of what we need to do is, in some of these bureaucracies at the government, in the military, in the education system. We've got to kind of create this culture where we can deconstruct and work in a common sense approach.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues too that we face when they promote and they get into these leadership positions, it really comes down to character in my mind. In many instances, character and going through this process, because we see so many that promote up, and then they're like, "Well, I'm the guy, I'm the gal, I have the answers. Everybody knows that I'm the best." But it's like, no, that's when you show that humility. And that's when you start looking, how can I make things better? How can I make my people better? How can I help my people? And Devin was talking about it. It's one of the biggest things that I feel as I get older. One of the most important attributes is the emotional intelligence for leaders, the self-awareness for them to understand what they are doing, what they understand, but as well as where are they falling short? What area are they weak in? So that way they can find the help and support to be able to buoy themselves up. Or what is it I'm not seeing that maybe someone else is? What is it the guys aren't coming to talk to me about because they don't feel comfortable to talk to me about? How do I pull that out of them so that way I can be more attuned to how the organization is running as a whole, so then I can actually make meaningful change? Because we see it, all of us have seen it throughout our careers, where the boss thinks everything's fantastic, and then there's just not good things going on down below. But there's not comfort to be able to share those feelings and thoughts above. I speak often because I was one of Master's, one of his intel guys. In the military intelligence, you got to learn how to speak truth to power, and I got to give factual, objective information. Mm-hmm. But too often we don't see that correspond throughout other avenues and other organizations, where people don't feel comfortable saying how they feel and what they think. And that's many times what needs to be said in hood. Because we're not going to be able to change anything unless people can feel comfortable to bring these things up. If I went to Doug and I gave him a brief and I said all the things he wanted to hear, that's not going to do anybody good. That's going to be detrimental.
No.
And so it is for any organization.
And that happens often. They're kind of pandering and saying what they want to hear. But a leader's got to be able to admit their weaknesses and faults. They've got to be able to say, okay, I don't have all the answers. I've got to ask and find out. And that culture, creating that culture of people being able to, the 360 grading, we're going to grade you anonymously what's broken. Yeah. And a leader needs to be able to say, like, okay, not let your self-esteem or your ego be hurt, your pride be hurt. Just say, like, okay, I've got some fundamental things that I need to work on myself. That's on me. When all my soldiers say this is a problem, that's on me. I've got to fix that. That's the culture we need.
I'm sure he can tell us it's difficult reading the comments sometimes. But 360 reviews are ruthless. They are, and highly encouraged. But when they were first put out, you saw a lot of senior leadership really started looking around.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeesh.
get ready.
Yep.
But you can tell so much from a 360 review. And I will give a plug for my current school, Liberty University, Christian-based school. Does a lot of servant leadership discussion, especially in my doctorate program. How to inject faith into how you lead, and it is phenomenal. So if you want more information, just go to their webpage. But it's awesome. It's been a lot of fun deepening my understanding of Scripture and going through that. It's been a lot of fun.
One thing I think about too is getting away from and Devin kind of talked about it, and we've been talking about it as well, is the old way of authoritarian leadership. When we see that I see that all too often still in law enforcement, but military by and large is getting better to move down the road to what I would think is more of a transformational type leader, and those that find the resources to be able to branch out, accept when they're wrong, accept the accountability, but as well as try to invest in their people and their organization. Whereas before, the authoritarian, it's always, I know what's right, I'm making the answer, do what I say. But it's like, whenever I have new folks that I supervise, I always tell them, like, look, I want you to come and tell me if I'm about to do something and you're looking, you're like, that doesn't look smart. Like, come at least tell me, and maybe I'll say, well, you don't understand, but thank you for bringing that up. I am aware of that thought and that opinion. But too often we all see it. We've seen it growing up, but within our careers, we're like, boss is about to do something really dumb, but I don't like him, and I don't feel comfortable he's going to accept what I'm going to tell him. So we'll see how this plays out.
How many times have you been in like an all call or something? Say, and as you tell the guy next to you, like, what? Why the heck we did? You can't say that.
Yeah.
How often have we heard? You can't say that. You can't say that.
Yep.
I hate that.
Yeah. But that's all too often. It's like, you got to breed that culture where people come to you. I just got through finishing Colin Powell's. He has 2 books. Might have more, but I got through one of them just recently. And he talks about getting in settings like this with his leadership and the people that are his subordinates and having full-on arguments and conversations to bring everything to the surface. And he's like, I want that. But then when I say, thank you, this is my decision, I expect everybody to fall in line. And if you have new information, great, come back and bring it. But if you don't have new information, that's the end. This is the order. This is the direction we're going in. But I feel like even that basic process is so lost on people because they don't want to feel challenged. They don't want to have to argue their point of view. And I know there's a lot of complaints sometimes about the newer generation about they always want to know the why. But again, going back to what we said earlier, the why is important. If they know what the end goal is, they might surprise you in how they get there. Whether they're using artificial intelligence or some other resource that maybe we're not tracking or we're aware of. I think that that's something that we need to understand, that we don't have all those answers.
Yeah. I'm gonna kind of do a plug and segue, because segues are cool. For what we've been talking about with leadership and things like that. We talk about accountability. We talk about ownership. I have really great leaders that I work with right now in my reserve unit, and I love that even though I'm an enlisted dude and I might be in a room with lieutenant colonels, if I'm working on a product that they're going to use to go fly a mission, whatever it is, because that's some of the stuff that I do, or I'm reviewing something with my junior enlisted guys, that, you know, when it comes time to talk about how that product that they use in their airplane, that it worked, it's rank comes off, it's did it work? Sir, did this work? Or you know, whatever his call sign is, this worked. And yeah, it worked really well. Or nah, there were some issues with it. All right, what do I need to do to fix it? What would you like to see next time when we work on this? Because in the end, you know, this is a representation of, if you have to go down range, then I want to know that I'm doing this right. And not because I want to own it and be like, good, yeah, I did such an awesome job. It's, I did the right thing so that my guy came back home, because he's the one that's going to be up in the air keeping my butt safe when we have to go down range to different places. And getting that feedback, hearing that things don't always go the way that they need to, having that ownership, I think that's important, which is where the segue comes in for our 2 candidates. Because I talked to you about this. One thing I can't stand, and I see it in the news, I'm pretty spun in with, I've told you before, like, I know a lot of people here in Utah that are frustrated on social media, on X, on YouTube, on Instagram, all kinds of things. They voice their opinion. And it's like they're talking to a wall because nobody ever talks about the thing. Whenever you try to bring up stuff that's going wrong here in Utah, our current leadership, they kind of just shy away from it. Our media certainly doesn't help. This is me putting on the social media hat and me being really critical and that stuff that I talk to you now. I lived in Arizona for a while, and one of the things that was refreshing about Joe Arpaio was when stuff wasn't good, he would have a press conference and be like, so this is really bad right now in Maricopa County. This is really bad, and we need to address it. Here's what I want to do that. I don't know who the current Davis County Sheriff is. I know that he's a Republican. I know that there's stuff that's bad going on in Davis County that's talked about because I see it. If you look for it, you know where to find it. You can see some of the issues that are plaguing Utah, Davis County, Weber County, Box Elder County, Salt Lake County for sure. And nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever says, this is a real issue. You know, they look at it like, oh, it happens every once in a while. Something bad that has to do with crime or some horrible thing. And it doesn't happen that often. It happens a lot more often than people think.
Yeah.
And they think that because it's Utah, you know, lots of Mormons, that it's this perfect little sheltered oasis of Mormon Christianity, whatever the difference that is. Christians are Christians. And it's not as black and white as that. There's stuff that's going on. Nobody talks about it. How would you change that?
Yeah, and the current sheriff.
Wrap that one up real quick.
Yeah. Well, I'll be a little bit brief with it, but the current sheriff is retiring. But I think there's a lot of different reasons for some of these things and how they handle stuff. I think that's partially leadership, but it's partially an element, the leadership, the mentality, but also a part of it's being maybe disconnected from what's actually happening in our society. As a dad and my kids are going to grade school, it's incumbent for me to know what is happening and what they're dealing with at a lot closer level than somebody that's not in that same situation. And so I very much feel like a lot of it is that portion of it. But here's the other thing. When we announced that we were running for office, there's no going back. And similarly, if I get up as the sheriff and make an announcement on media to the public, I am now holding a standard or myself to a standard. Mm-hmm. If I say this is an issue, then I got to openly do something about it. A lot of times we have people within these organizations, they just kind of arbitrarily play within the lines because they don't have to stand firm in a certain direction. And it's a lot easier to be in that arbitrary realm. And I'm not a fan of that. I feel like it would answer and get rid of a lot of fears that individuals have. We have people that feel on both ends of the spectrum on ice. Either they love them or they hate them. But I think if a public statement came out on where the sheriff's office and law enforcement in Davis County fit and why, I feel like it would get rid of a lot of those concerns, a lot of that gossip, a lot of those fear-mongering, to be able to bring clarity to that. And I feel like, again, that's incumbent on that elected official within the county to come out and be openly transparent about where we fit and why. Again, if there are things that we're facing, child sexual crimes, huge in Davis County, huge in Utah. We don't give enough resources. Every single time that hook's going in the waters, we're pulling these guys out. Well, we should probably put more hooks in the water. And again, we know what's plaguing us most here in Davis County and in Utah, mental health, substance abuse. Well, those are great or very highly effects from sexual abuse. People that are sexually abused, that's typically they start going for ways and means to be able to mask that and cope. Yeah. And those are two that are definitely there. And I think that's it's disgusting that we don't bring it up more. The child sexual abuse, I know it's uncomfortable, but you know what? That's exactly what these guys want. They don't want you to think that they exist, because if they don't exist, the attention, the resources, and the focus aren't going to come around.
And I think all Utahns would want to put resources towards that. I mean, everybody agrees that that's a problem. We need to do more, to deter that if we can.
Yeah, and if people want to argue that, you can go talk to Troy Rollins, our elected county attorney. He'll tell you all about it, because his guys are very much involved in that process and work closely with the Attorney General's office.
Oh, we were talking about it with Mike Smith, too, because we were down the Republican convention. Mike Smith came into the booth, And the biggest thing going on in Utah County is child sex trafficking. He says it's the biggest thing I fight down there. And he had just arrested a young man, 17, 18 years old, and I discussed this on Phil Lyman's podcast yesterday, where he owed the cartel $5,000. And so he was prostituting himself, plus theft and all this other kind of stuff, so he could get the cartel back because he was deathly afraid of the cartel. And so you've got massive cartel problems, you got drug problems, you got sex trafficking problems, and a lot of it's coming across the board. I mean, a lot of it's homegrown. He was saying that he had arrested a guy that it was a father had brought his own kid to meet another guy for sex. I mean, down in Utah County. I mean, it's just horrific stuff. But cartel's a big thing. He was also just discussing that they had arrested a cartel hitman in Utah County that led them to like 15 different bodies. A full-grown Tren de Agua hitman doing his business in Utah County. I'm like, and I suppose it's supposedly Happy Valley, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure Salt Lake County is probably worse, 10 times worse, because of how big the population is there. And Davis County and Weber County aren't any different, right? So we need a lot of leadership going on. And
and getting to the problems. Like I talk about on the law enforcement side, our focus should be the things that affect our way of life. You know, traffic, speeding, running stop signs. Yeah, maybe they're a problem, but they're not what actually affects our way of life. And that's what I think that we need to put more focus and emphasis on. You know, I've gone to one of my old partners. We went to a hotel where a kid was kidnapped, and there were 3 grown men. Like, these things happen in Davis County. We go and we arrest a guy that comes to Farmington wanting to have sex with a 14-year-old girl. He brought meth with him. He was going to introduce her to meth and then rape her. Like, these things are happening. And if they're happening on this level, we need to give it more attention. And we also need to work with the legislature to make sure the accountability is where it needs to be. And we also need to put pressure on the judges. They kick, for example, that girl that was 14 years old, that guy came out from Utah County. He was arrested. 24 hours later, the judge kicks him loose with a promise to appear 2 weeks later. So it's like, you just put him back on the street. Who's to say he's not going out victimizing people now or children now? And of course, that promise to appear comes 2 weeks later. He doesn't show up, goes to a warrant. Thankfully, I spent a whole day, went out to Utah County and found him and arrested him, brought him back. But those things are happening. And it's
Mike Smith said the exact same thing. He says, I arrest people and they're out faster than I can process the paperwork. Because we have liberal judges appointed by the Senate
You really need to
that are
correct
just
that.
letting people out.
I mean, I look at Rudy Giuliani when he came in as mayor of New York and made it kind of a police state. And it fixed a lot of things. Yeah, it's just basically getting the drugs off the street, getting, people arrested, making it a not livable environment for these thugs that come into our state. So, yeah, as a legislature, legislature's trying to balance cost. And everybody's mad about their property taxes going up, and with inflation and truth and taxation hearings, where we continue to raise it. So then the commissioners are looking at, well, how do we cut and where do we cut and stuff? I think everybody's committed that we don't want to cut police and fire. In fact, we probably should enhance in some of those areas, and we probably should enhance funding in some of the appellate court systems and things like that to process these the backlog that have a little bit better. But yeah, these are, this is why I'm interested in working with John, because I think you have a great concept and perspective of what needs to happen at that level. And, if I am chosen to be a legislature, I want to, work on some of these bills and reappropriate money, because we have a lot of money being spent to not going nowhere. Like it's earmarked for something. It just sits there. It's not effective. So, good legislation, bad legislation. Every time we have legislation come out, I want to look at what's being appropriated and does it meet what our needs are. Obviously, law enforcement, and this is a need in our community as we see the rise of suicide, of crimes, of drugs, of homelessness, all these social issues. So
I will add another thing too that I think about, and I spoke about on this campaign trail, is I think too often leaders or administrators, because I don't think the leaders, administrators, and supervisor managers are all the same. There's differentiating factors when it comes to those. but leaders of organizations or administrators of organizations such as the education program, but as well as within law enforcement, I feel sometimes it's so much easier for them to go and ask for more money and taxes without really looking in, because the people in Utah are so supportive of these entities and these organizations that they trust the heads of these organizations when they say, hey, we need more money. I definitely feel that, yeah, in many ways we do need more money, but I also feel in many ways we should be doing some internal reflection on the programs we're doing and what we're doing within society. And does it make sense? Like we can even talk about the school district and how the vast majority of them now, they work on computers and laptops. So then the question's begged, okay, if this is the direction, do we need actual teachers at this many? Like, what is the right answer? And I think that's what we need to have people more involved to have those be challenged more often, if that makes sense. Justin, but oh, sorry, maybe you're still
Nope,
bringing
I stay out of the politics.
You know what? I will read this for you. I actually wasn't going to read this, but since you said it, so here's some factual information that I wanted to share with everybody. So in the 1960s, 70 to 75% of U.S. legislators were veterans. Today, that's 19%.
So 75 to 19.
70 to 75 in the 60s to our current day, 19% have served in the military. And we see how much frustration we have with the federal government. Well, I don't know if it's causation. I don't know if that's a contributing factor, but I do know the vast majority of veterans that I know, they love the country, they love their family, they love the freedom. And I think we need a little bit more of that in Washington. You know, Thomas Jefferson, 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. George Washington, in some ways, he wasn't the number one pick to be the leader of the Revolutionary War because there were others with more experience. But how does outdated experience get us to the positions we need? I think too often we equate experience in the seat as in actual being a capable leader. And I think that's one thing that's hard to try to explain and help people understand. And a quote for Masters over here. So from Samuel Adams, one of my favorites. If ever a time should come when vain and aspiring men shall possess the highest seats in government, our country will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent its ruin.
Amen.
Yeah. What to say about that?
Which is what I love about George
Gun
Washington.
laws are unconstitutional.
George Washington did not want, he was retiring after the war, and they came to him and said, sir, we want you to be the president of the United States. And he's like, I don't want to be the president of the United States, but I will do it for the sake of this country. So then the second term rolls around. Sir, will you be the president of the United States again? No, I'm ready to retire, but I will do it for and then the third time, he's the only president voted unanimously twice to be the president of the United States. But that's the kind of leader I think that you need. Somebody that's not aspiring, somebody that wants to get in and just serve and do good. Not like, I want to get up there and I want to camp out and get a whole bunch of campaign money and then keep my power and create legislation like SB 54 where it can ensure myself to always get back on the ballot because of my name recognition and because of my war chest of money. That's not the kind of leaders that we need. We need people who are not aspiring. We need people to come in and serve faithfully and diligently, and then get out and let somebody else do it.
Absolutely. Well, it goes back to even joining the military and being a veteran, writing that blank check of doing what is best for the country when it's needed and not trying to find how do I benefit from this.
Exactly.
And it's that investment. For me, I know we all come from different backgrounds, but for me, when I was in sixth grade, my parents separated, my dad left the state, and he was gone until I came back from my serving an LDS mission in England. And it's one of those things that, and as a dad now, I know there's no way I can be successful at the levels I want to be on my own, that it's very much a community base. So I need to invest in that community so that way they can help me, just like a leader. I can't do everything as a leader, but if I invest in the people to help me, man, we can do so much more.
Exactly.
We can do so much more.
Great.
We need leadership that understands our past, understands our history, and appreciates it and is grateful for it. I mean, we have a lot of veterans out there. It's Memorial Day. There's a reason why we celebrate Memorial Day, and we hope that our leaders accomplish that. I mean, every single Memorial Day, you're going to see the president out there with the wreath. He's going to go to the grave of the unknown soldier and do his pleasantries, right? But is there really feeling behind it? Is there really meaning behind that? I mean, I've been to Arlington, and I've seen the acres and acres of those who have gone before us. I've been to Gettysburg. I've been to all these memorials, and I know what the Civil War cost us, what World War II cost us. Do our leaders appreciate that? I mean, we have
Go look at the waiting list to take care of a grave in France for one of our fallen soldiers.
for real. I mean, Normandy, Utah Beach, all those type of things. We need leadership that actually appreciates our history. We have a massive immigration problem. And the biggest thing I always point out whenever I talk about immigration is illegal immigrants do not go through the process where they appreciate what we have, where they understand World War I, Vietnam War, all the history, all those have gone before us. They understand what our freedoms mean. They come from socialistic countries where all they know is what they've grown up with. They don't understand what capitalism is. They don't understand what a democratic republic is. They don't understand what a constitutional republic is. They don't have any of these things that they've grown up with. And so when they come across the border illegally, they bring with them all that they know, and that's not enough. They don't assimilate, right? And we have the same problem with our own leadership. The reason why I point out the illegal problem is the same mentality a lot of illegals come across the border with, which is they just don't know. We have a lot of homegrown problems where it's just not taught. Our universities are universities of indoctrination. The youth are growing up not appreciating the military, not appreciating those who have gone before us. They're not appreciating our freedoms. They're not appreciating the Constitution. And we have a very, very serious problem in our youth. We got a socialist in New York. We got socialism in Chicago. We got socialism up in Seattle now. We have a Muslim population that fear their religion more than the freedoms of this country, and it's inundated Europe and taken over Europe, and that will come over here. And unless we understand our history, unless we understand those who've gone before, unless we understand what our veterans have done, why we fought the Revolutionary War, what Francis Scott Key penned, and why we declare that. I mean, there's so little understanding it. So every single time I see a flag, I see jets flying over a football stadium, I see Memorial Day, I see soldiers walking down the corridors in an airport, and there's just such great patriotism and love for that. I'll get emotional about it. We lack that nowadays. It's just such a lack of honesty, of appreciation, and the next generation is just not understanding that. But doing podcasts like this, we hope that we get that information out there, where we get that appreciation out there, where the next generation doesn't lose what we have, because
It's one generation away. It's always been
that's
said.
what I was just going to quote, is that we're always one generation away of losing everything we have, of our freedoms and everything. And I quoted this last week when John Croft was on here, and Fletcher and Susan Lee were on here. If you lose your value in a higher authority, in God, the state becomes more important. And if the state becomes more important, it's no longer we the people. If the state rules everything, if the state's most important, then your freedoms are gone. So this country is one nation under God for a reason. And we get our authority, we get our freedoms, we get everything, not from the Constitution, not from government, we get it from God. The Constitution just pins that and reigns in the government, doesn't reign in the people. And there's too many people who have died for the freedoms that we have, and there's not enough people teaching the next generation to maintain those freedoms. So we got the great state of Utah here. We were doing a pretty good job, but yeah, one generation away, right?
But you're right. Like last year I had the great opportunity to jump on a short notice deployment to Poland last year, and it was phenomenal. So I went out there, and I actually got to go to Utah Beach and walk along the shoreline for several miles and go to the U.S. and U.K. service members' grave sites. Beautiful. And then I also got to go to Auschwitz. Man, that's a humbling experience.
You got to go to Auschwitz.
Yeah, southern Poland. So seeing that all of the lives that were lost there at Normandy, and then going to Auschwitz and walking through some of those gas chambers and seeing a wall where the firing squad that is still intact with bullet holes riddled throughout it. And that's what we as Americans would and did for a country most people had never even been to, and people they never met, and they went there to sacrifice for others. And man, it's a humbling experience. And I also got to go to Luxembourg, where General Patton's buried, and we have a great service member gravesite there outside, not too far from Battle of the Bulge. I had to go there with the 101st bunker down there in Bastogne, and that was a very humbling experience. Foxhole's still there. You can go climbing them. And then go to 9/11, the ground zero, and see those things. And man, like you said, it's that history. We need to be able to feel and internalize it and make it real. Or what else was all that sacrifice for? And that's what I think we definitely need to make sure that we understand that and appreciate and respect that.
Yeah, I've been to. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, freedom is never free, and we can never be complacent in our struggle for the freedom. And that starts with our youth, as you mentioned, and that starts with the military and every aspect of government, keeping it founded on the constitutional principles that it started with.
Yeah, I've been to the 9/11. I've been to the memorial there for the Twin Towers. Just awe-inspiring. The places that are absolutely breathtaking. It is like Gettysburg. I don't know if everybody's been to Gettysburg and walked to those places where just thousands.
Go to the 4th of
thousands
July in Gettysburg. You will not forget it.
of soldiers have just died there. It's breathtaking what the people have fought for freedom. And there's a lot of people out there just trying to twist that and make good evil and evil good. And there's very few of us who are out there willing to stick our necks out on the line, forego all the evil comments in our comments section or anything else like that, and say, no, these are the standards. This is freedom. This is the Constitution. Conservatism is what keeps our freedoms. Liberalism is what's going to take that away.
Yep.
Because socialism doesn't work.
No.
Democratic socialism doesn't work. Sharia law definitely doesn't work. And I don't know why that's getting more popular, but
If JFK looked at what is going on now in the Democratic Party, he wouldn't even recognize it. It's not the, and that's where I think people are stuck, is what used to be let's do a little bit more civil rights, let's do a little bit whatever. It's a different party now, and it is pandering to so far to the left that it's almost coming all the way back around again. It's just insane.
I don't even know if it's even left anymore. I just think it's just straight up
It's crazy.
it's socialistic.
Good and evil. That's what it is.
There's a book, and I don't know if any of you guys have read it. You guys read it. You guys are talking about like, I read this other book the other day, and I'm like, I read it. I like to read. Man, you guys. You mean that difference between a listen and and I have a wall of books that I read. But
There's a book that is nothing but the bookshelves of leaders.
yeah.
It's amazing good.
There's a book, I can't remember who wrote it. I could look it up. But anyways, look up who wrote it. But it's called Young Patriots. It's not a thick book.
No.
Our founding fathers, they loved what they hated that they have to fight. Like it's in there. They didn't want to have to fight Great Britain because it was, in many ways, it's kind of similar to the way that the Civil War played out. 'Cause it was families fighting against families, generations of people that have known each other. Now they're on opposite sides of things. A lot of the people that fought the Revolutionary War, they came here as immigrants. So I have an appreciation for we're a nation of immigrants. They came here and they sacrificed. We talked about sacrifice a lot today to make a better place. And then they fought to maintain. They sacrificed more. And it was hard. A lot of people died. And our founding fathers knew. I mean, they talked about it. They knew that the Civil War was coming. They didn't know if our nation was going to last. They knew that the subjects that came up in the Civil War were going to be a dividing issue and they had to be addressed, and they weren't in a position to address it. And that's why some of the things when the nation was founded look the way that they do. And then the Civil War happened, and we had Americans fighting Americans. And not because necessarily, that they hated the people in the North, not because the Democrats and the Republicans, however you want to look at that, because, they used to be this and this, nobody cares. It was America's fighting Americans. Because some of them got drafted, some of them didn't. Some of them believed in what they were fighting for. Some of them were doing what they thought was right because of their family. So Robert E. Lee led the South. He's from Virginia. It wasn't because he was a bad person. He was a great leader. He was asked by the North to lead them. And he said, well, I'm from Virginia. I want to lead the people of the South. And it nearly destroyed this nation, the Civil War. Luckily, we had a good leader in Abraham Lincoln. And, Gettysburg Address. I think you were going to read that.
I think we're going to read that.
I think you need to read that.
Yeah.
I'll let you.
Yeah. So we're going to close up, folks. So 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember that we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. November 19th, 1863.
Well said.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
I do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and I will obey the orders
of the President of the United States
and the orders of the officers appointed over me,
according to the regulations
and the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
So help me God.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Well, we hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. go out and actually go to a memorial, go to a grave, and put a flower on a veteran's gravesite. Appreciate what Memorial Day is. Don't just go out in a boat and go on fishing or go to a local barbecue, but at least spend some time, find a veteran, thank a veteran, hug a veteran, and put a flower on a grave. There's plenty of them all across this state. We appreciate everybody being on board, and we'll see everybody on the next video.